You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Creating Active Lives, where I'm chatting with Rebecca Roberts, or Becky as I know her, from Bfitr. Becky's actually been in the industry for 20 years and, like me, has kind of worked in a range of different things around that time, but predominantly with what we call the specialist population. So she worked for the Exercise Referral Scheme in North Wales for 15 years. And, well, tell us what you realised when you were working on the scheme, Becky. Hi and welcome. But tell us what you realised when you were working on the scheme about what happens next.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Well, having worked with these clients for 16 weeks, and then I always look at where they go to after. And, you'd approach the leisure centres and say, that we need some easier classes between the mainstream where we could follow people or forward them onto. And it was always a struggle for the leisure centre to grasp the idea of easy class. We got a few going, but not as many as I felt there should have been. And that really frustrated me. As you develop a good rapport with that client, you build them up to a good level of fitness, but not quite enough to jump around and do the circuit or the aqua class that, the generic instructor would deliver. Yeah, so that would I just knew there was something more needed.
Do you think as well, for a lot of people, and you are in an area that is quite rural and very beautiful for those of you that don't know North Wales, but do you think there's also a need for things that are a little bit more on people's doorsteps rather than having to go to the big leisure centre or go to one of the towns?
Yeah, definitely, because sometimes the bus route doesn't always drop off outside the door where we are. Like, for example, where I am now, the nearest bus station is maybe, let me think, half a mile. Maybe they could get dropped off at the door,
right?
But you'd have to know that information before you got on that bus. The actual bus stop is not that close. And for us, like the major hospitals and physio appointments are usually a good half an hour car journey away. So, once people have finished their physio or finished their rehab, whatever it may be, getting someone else is tricky because you have the hospital cars, don't you, that take them for those appointments. But then if you are carrying on your fitness or whatever after, you have to fork out for that transport, if you like.
And that in a lot of cases as well, people like, as I said, they like something that's local, that's with people that they know, that's friendly. So what was it that made you start delivering community-based activity sessions? Was it noticing that there wasn't really anything for them to go to, or was it in response to people asking?
Well, I love delivering. I absolutely adore working with people and seeing them progress. And I've always enjoyed delivering exercise to music. However, when I was first taught how to teach exercise to music, jump around, fast beats, high music, I've managed to tailor my exercise to music to a more nice music, their age range, their a slower beat, which they can all manage. And then I've tailored it so that we do a warm-up, we do our main routine, which may only be 15 minutes. Then we do a strength component and a balance, always a balance, and floor work. So compared to what I was taught years ago, how to deliver that class, I've what would the right word, moulded my delivery around what I knew people wanted. So they need more of a varied class, some rest between. They want the choice of whether to do this or not. Chairs there in case they need support. A wall nearby in case they need a wall. And always in the gym, there was never any wall space. There was never a piece of kit that you needed to balance with. There was never enough possibly chairs. It was definitely based on my experience of delivery that Bfitr was created, if you like.
And it's the community aspect as well, isn't it? It's the fact that a lot of people want to be with other people when they're doing this. It's a social it's a social outing for a lot of people, and it's being able to sort of have a bit of a chat, know that they're exercising, they're getting in there, they're strengthening, they're getting in their balance and things like that, which is so important. Do you find that it's almost the social element that really keeps them? Because we know that exercise, that activity is good for us, but is it the social element that really gets them hooked in the first place?
Definitely. And having said that, it's made me think, actually, a few comments are, it's my highlight of my week. It's, what gets me up in the morning, and the connections that a small village hall can bring, an exercise class, brings people together from that community who didn't know each other before. And that for me is really lovely because it brings people closer together. And I find that I do it like in 7 miles between each village. And they usually come to both sessions from different villages. And then that brings in other people from other villages. And yeah, it's really grown in that way. But social part is, for some, the reason they come out.
And I think we forget that, particularly those of us that work in the industry. We either work in leisure centres or we're always seeing clients. We're busy. I think generally people are very busy in life at the moment. If you've got a family, then it's school, holiday activities, all that sort of stuff. But for a lot of people, families have left home, they've moved away, and actually a social opportunity like this is just so important in their, not just their physical health, which is obviously being worked on with exercise, but I think it must be a big mental health boost for people as well.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes that bringing of people together then instigates that extra movement. So they might say, right, okay, you're coming to that class. Oh, you're going to that as well, are you? Let's try that together. And it doesn't always mean, exercise. It could be anything, whether it's craft club or knitting or anything. But that then obviously improves their movement, doesn't it? They're less depressed because of that extra, what's the word? That extra community, isn't it? They're building, and those extra moments where they're out the house and they're meeting new people and doing different things.
That's it. And it's a couple of weeks ago I was talking with somebody about the power of creativity and how important that is as an activity. And I think, we're so used to thinking of activity as being hot, sweaty exercise, fitness, the gym and stuff like that. But actually, it's just doing something that's a bit more than you would normally do. So going to a knitting club, going to even a book club, where people they're sitting around, they're talking, but they've physically had to get themselves there, and they're sitting up and they're chatting. We forget that activity isn't just about exercise. It's about so much more in your life. And we've kind of we've lost the hobby kind of feelings, haven't we? What's your hobby? We don't have hobbies anymore. We watch television, whereas back in the day, people had a lot more hobbies. So it's almost bringing a sense of that back.
It's like getting out the car, isn't it? And then walking to the venue, and then maybe an extra flight of stairs than you normally used to. And just that walk back, and maybe you'll do a detour to the church or something, or to the bookshop. So it just all builds up to your general movement, doesn't it? Even getting in the garden, and just watering that plant at the end of the garden. I don't know, taking some leaves off, coming back in. And I always say to people, like, when you're putting the washing on the line, you could do a few heel raises, a few upright rows as you lift your clothes up. There's so many ways that we move. Definitely the upright rows. And I think in the fitness industry, it's really lost that. It's been lost a little bit, the movement and fitness thing. We've gone the extreme, I feel.
And that's one of my passions really, is let's bring back everyday activity, because then you've always got something, whereas going to the gym 3 times a week doesn't necessarily mean that you're active enough the rest of the week. And I know, like, what you're saying is, even if people are getting in the car, physically getting in the car, they're driving somewhere, they're getting out of the car, they're walking to the venue. We're reducing sedentary time. And I know for a lot of people, that's the big issue, is they sit down too much for too long. Whereas even if they just come along and do the warm-up, it's more than they were doing before. They've broken up that pattern. They've got to walk a little bit. And I know we've talked about this before in the past, but when I was on the referral schemes, people would come along to the sessions to tell me they weren't coming because they were too tired, or they were in too much pain, or they had too many aches, or they just didn't feel up to it. But they would physically come along to tell me that face to face. And it was just like, okay. And 9 times out of 10, they'd join in with the cool down, or they'd do a bit of the warm up, or they'd stay for the coffee and chat at the end of it or something. But that's when you start to realise what an important social experience it is for people, because they want to belong. And even if they can't do the session that week, they just feel that they want to be there as kind of part of a group. Have you ever found that?
Definitely. And I think it's that commitment as well to exercise referral, and that you build a really good relationship with them at the start. I used to find that empathising with their condition, and then, being confident enough, or they be confident enough with you to come, if you like. And like you say, even if they just come and have the cup of tea, see what the class is about. And if they want to move their feet and do some circles and shoulder rolls, then they can. And then I used to find they used to just keep coming back and doing more and more. And then by the end of the, the 16 weeks, they'd be life-changing, movement. The difference in their movement was life-changing. Some people are able to do things that they've not done in years. And, just simple stuff for us who are quite able-bodied is a huge thing. Like, putting your socks on, tying your laces, being able to get your pants on, just things like that we really, take for granted.
And that independence is a huge thing, isn't it? For some people, it isn't. We tend to think of fitness and activity and exercise is, I can shave a minute off my 5K time, or I can go from 5K to 10K. For a lot of people, it is, I can get dressed on my own. That's the difference it makes. They might not be able to walk much further or much faster, but they can get dressed on their own. And that is a huge, huge milestone for them. And we don't, I've known people who say they just want to be able to have a bath on their own because they haven't got the upper body strength to get in and out of the bath. And being able to do it on their own is just overwhelmingly powerful. And I think when you're fit, when you're healthy, when you're very able to do things, you underestimate the impact that not being able to do simple things has on your life because you've never really experienced it. Although I'm sure anyone listening who's ever been really ill or has had an injury that meant that they can't walk or they can't use an arm or something, whatever it was, will realise how frustrating it is when you can't do things and how grateful you are to get back to it. So so who do you typically work with? Tell me about some of your, don't tell me about your clients, but the type of client.
Well, I've worked with many clients, if you like. At the minute, I'm still working with a cancer client who I've worked with for about 18 months now. And we've been doing that virtually. I haven't met him yet, which I can't wait to do, hopefully the end of this month. I work with lots of different people, lots of different conditions. Some are able to do lots of things, some are able to do not many at all. Currently working with a gentleman who's had a few falls, so trying to build up his strength, mobility, and definitely balance. Just people generally who want to improve their core, because I work with lots of people who have lower back problems or back problems. We generally do have a back problem, don't we, in this country? Lots of people sit down quite a bit, and our core becomes a bit lazy. So I like to take people back to what I call basics, and we do lots of work on the floor, and 4-point balance kind of things with lots of stretches and mobility. I like to start them at that end, and that's what I would say I specialise in. Yes, I deliver classes, but they are, tailored, like I say, with that strength, balance, coordination element. But I tend to work with people at the lower end, and I'd like to forward them on to other things in the community that are more, when more movement is involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I'm going to create, I think I might create a podcast bingo card, because this would definitely be on it, which is start where your client is, get to know your client, but start where they are. And again, I think sometimes the more mainstream fitness and exercise opportunities are starting at a higher level than the client is. And that immediately puts them off, because they go in, they can't do it. And that immediately sets that kind of, it reinforces, I can't do this. This isn't for me. I'm not ready for this. Whereas when you start where the client is, like you say, even if it's just basic mobility, basic core work, basic stretches, they go away thinking, I can do that. That's okay. But it's that, don't you find that doing the basics well, they see results so much faster than if they try and do the more advanced stuff before they're ready?
Definitely. And like you said, they go away from the session feeling, actually, I did more than I thought. And to give somebody that confidence and motivation from the first session gives you a good, base to work from. And they definitely will come back, because, you've given them that confidence. And like I say, I love seeing people improve. You mentioned before about people, if you've not been ill yourself, you don't really realise, how bad it can be. I found over the years that people actually forget how bad they were. So I like people to write down where they actually are now, and then say, I don't know, 2 months down the line, and just go through what they can do now, but then go back to what they could not do. And the difference is massive, and you really do forget how bad things were quite quickly. And I think when people say they've not really improved, and you go back to that list of what they couldn't do, and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, I can do that now. That's easy. And yeah, so that's what I like to do as well, is look back as well as look forward.
Because obviously any gains are going to be probably quite small, incremental, and like you say, you don't notice that actually you couldn't get out of the chair without using your arms. So yeah, you're still getting out of the chair, but you're not using your arms anymore, and you're doing it much quicker. And they're like, oh gosh, yeah. So it's that reminder of where they were, and I think that's so important. But more importantly, I just think I'm such a believer in, really start by teaching the basics, by working with people from where they are now. What can you do now? Where are we working towards? Because it's sometimes it's, like you go into a mainstream class that's way above your level, and you feel, as the person, you feel, oh, I can't do this, I'm unfit, I'm unhealthy, it's not for me, instead of thinking that was the wrong level for me. And that, is something that I know you work with individuals and groups, but it's something that I think when you're working with a group, you need to be able to kind of make the sessions a bit bespoke to the individuals, so that not everybody's doing the same thing. So is that something that you work with your groups? Is
Definitely, and especially if new people come to the door, I always go to them straight away, say, hello, I'm Becky, this is whatever, this is the class we deliver. If at any point you get too much, just do what you can, stop, march, there's a chair there if you need it. But I always look at everybody in their eye, if you like, and if at any point you see something's out of line, they're not managing to keep up to the, the beat or whatever it may be, then I will always go towards them and just say, quiet word, are you all right? Don't have to do these things. Just do whatever you can do, And even if when it comes to doing sets and reps and things of a particular exercise, I'll just say, well, just do, less is more sometimes, isn't it? A good knee lift on each side is better than 15 knee lifts of poor quality. So it's just saying to them, just do what you can. And that's my word, I think, just do what you can. And everyone gets treated the same, if you like.
That's it. But it's giving people permission to kind of go to the point where they've had enough, or where they feel they have. Now, I mean, I'll be honest, the most people out there can probably do more than they do. But you're not going to tell them that when they first come along. What you want them to do is go away thinking, I can do this, not they pushed me, and yeah, I did more, but it was only because they pushed me. You want them going away thinking they can do it. 9 times out of 10, as I say, people can do more than they're comfortable with initially. But it's that confidence, isn't it? It's that comfort. And I know with we talk, anyone who works with athletes will talk about, periodization and all these macro, micro cycles and everything. But actually, for me, the first phase of working with anyone is building their confidence and building their technique. You're not thinking about progression or anything in the first little while. You're just thinking about getting their confidence, getting their technique right. And once you get that right, all of a sudden, they're literally like, oh my God, I can't believe how much fitter I am. And it's like, actually, no, you're not that much fitter. It's just you're more confident about doing more. You could do more than you were doing, but your confidence has grown. But it's like, you don't sort of say to them, well, actually, but you just say, oh, no, it's amazing. Look at all the effort you've put in. Look at how much you've progressed. And they're like, wow, look how good I am. If anyone out there's listening, this is, it is something we do. But it's that confidence, isn't it, that grows, not the fitness at first.
I think sometimes we're fearful as well, aren't we, of going into new places and new classes. But I think if you've got an instructor that's, can understand that and home in on that, as soon as they walk through the door, you can see them looking around, comparing what maybe other people have got on, their trainers, and, oh gosh, do they all go at the front? Do they all have their own space? And I know that's a thing, isn't it? Is having their own space on the floor is massive in some classes. Whereas I try and change people around. I have a different setup. We have our chairs near us, but no one has their slot, if you know what I mean. So I think that's important, isn't it?
It's so important. I think people get really, really nervous. I mean, most of us, if we're trying something completely new, there is a certain amount of trepidation or will I be able to do it? But this is where, as an instructor, whether you're working one-to-one or with a group, it's so important to have that eye contact with people, to welcome them, to say, look, as it's your first session, just do what you feel comfortable with. I don't say things like do what you can, but just do what you're comfortable with. And at the point, if at any point you just want to take a breather, that's fine. It's giving people permission to try it, but it's making sure that they're included. And you do get some people who, that's my place and things. And I think it is important to mix it up a bit, isn't it? Just so that you avoid the sort of slightly more possessive people. But just thinking of a couple of instances I've had where people are like, that's my space, and it's like, actually, it's not your space. It's where you always stand, but it's not your space. But it is funny sometimes when you watch people. But 99 times out of 100, don't you find that people are really welcoming of newcomers? They're really, really friendly. They're really supportive. And it's kind of, once people walk through the door and somebody comes up and says, oh, hi, are you new? Oh, Becky's over there. She's the instructor. Oh, it's really good fun here. That you can almost see that relaxation kick in. They're like, oh, okay, it's okay. It's not too bad. Do you think it's worth kind of having a couple of your more regulars almost like having a role about welcoming newcomers? Is that something you do, or do they just do it automatically?
I do find they just do it automatically. I mean, I try and do that as part of, my session, if you like. If anybody does come through the door, I'll always go and see them first. Even if they're late, because some people are late coming in, aren't they? And I always, at the end of the session as well, make sure I go over and just see how they got on, how they found it. And then obviously you can tweak it next time then, can't you?
That's the thing. And sometimes they might sort of say, well, actually, it was a little bit easy, but I was a bit nervous, so I didn't put as much effort in. Or they might sort of say, oh, there are bits of it that were a little bit hard. And you can say, all right, well, next time I do offer alternatives, so just sit with one of those. What would be your advice then to somebody who's listening and thinking, I'd really like to start doing something a bit more community-based, a bit more active? What would be your advice about finding something that works for them?
I would suggest, if you see a poster or anything that you see, like the look of, is maybe give the instructor a ring, inform them that maybe you'll come in or like to come. If there's no contact number, then, just turn up. Just sit on the side, don't have to take part. And just, check the session, what it's like. And then it gives you a chance to, speak with the instructor. And then they know a bit more about you then. And they should then be able to tailor or, modify the session to accommodate you. That's what I would say.
And it's, you get a feel, don't you? I think if people are friendly and welcoming, that it's going to be the right class for you. And also ask around, just ask if anyone else goes to any sessions or anything like that, because it is so important to kind of feel part of it, because it's, we know that particularly community-based sessions are much more community focused. I know in some of the bigger leisure centres and the bigger towns and cities, you go in, you do your session, you leave. There isn't quite that sense of community, whereas the local ones do tend to be much more focused on chatting and what's happening and everything. I know I was covering a CC class once in, it wasn't quite mid Wales, it was just about half an hour south of Brecon, but it was a community-based one. I'd actually written the training course, and the instructor was going away, and she said, do you know anyone that will cover? And I went, do you know what, I'll do it. Put my money where my mouth is. And they were just so friendly. And people were like, it was autumn, and people were bringing in all their apples and blackberries and things to share. And, it was all tea and coffee afterwards. And there were a couple of new people, and they were just immediately welcomed in. And you just got to feel that this was a really important part of their week. Not just the exercise, but that contact, that welcoming people in, that feeling part of a community. And I think it's something that we overlook when we're talking about fitness gains. We forget about the social gains, don't we? So you've talked a bit about some of the gains that people have had, like being able to do their shoelaces and put on their shoes. But what other things do people say, gosh, I can do this now and I couldn't before?
There's so many stories I could tell you, but the situation that comes to my mind is someone walking up the steps who maybe couldn't do single stairs, but is now able to run up the stairs. And like when you have to just dash up the stairs for something, I don't know, might be on the phone and you need to get your wallet with your cash card in. And he was unable to walk up the stairs singly, but then now he's able to run up the stairs, which, might sound small, but it's actually quite a big thing, isn't it? That increased strength and explosive strength to go up those stairs. That's just one example, but I have so many that I can't even think of one, if that makes any sense.
What about people saying things like they're just more independent or they're going out more?
And they must be. I've got many stories of people like being able to then get off on the bus, isn't it? That's a good one. Is getting actually onto the bus. Sometimes pre ramps and things onto buses, and when they lowered and hired them, it's getting up onto that first step, isn't it? And having the confidence to then go out. Worked with a gentleman recently who's fearful of falling, like I say, and he doesn't want to go out the house because he's scared in case he can't go to the loo. Because obviously once you're out of your comfort zone of your own home, you then don't know where the nearest loo is, and you can't get there, quickly. So I've got a bit of a job on my hands to try and get him past that stage. But, for somebody who's not even thought about exercise and moving more to help themselves, that's such a scary, place to be, isn't it? Not being able to get out of the house because of fear. And once you're in that cycle, it's really hard to get out of, isn't it?
Absolutely. And there's, I've talked about incontinence and other things, and incontinence is a big barrier to a lot of people for exercise, but there is a type of incontinence that we don't necessarily highlight, which is what's called functional incontinence, which is where actually the bladder, the bowels are fine. The issue is knowing you need to go to the loo and not being able to physically get to the loo in time. It takes too long to walk or get there, which is bad enough most of the time anyway. Yes, pelvic floor exercises really help with that, but it's less to do with the pelvic floor and more to do with physical ability. But that's a huge barrier, isn't it, for people when they're going out, if they don't know where the loos are, they don't know if they can get there. Are they up some stairs, down some stairs, round a corner? And that is a worry that often keeps people at home because, know where everything is. But being able to give them that, to reduce that fear slightly, to sort of say, I will be able to get to the loo because I'm fit enough, is huge, a big confidence boost.
And same for, getting to the shops, isn't it? You might only be able to get to the closest one now. But then I've had people who've been able to say that they've gone on the bus and they've gone to like the nearest town and be able to walk around all the shops, nearly not all day, but for a good hour or so, which they couldn't do that before. And that is a massive thing, isn't it? To be able to go out, get on the bus, be confident enough to step onto those steps, be able to get off the chair without using your hands once you're on the bus, isn't it? And then going out and walking for a period of time where you can stop and rest for lunch if you need, or on a bench, but to be able to physically get out of the house and do all that, it's life-changing, isn't it? Gives you a lease of life.
It is. And the other thing is, we always think about being active, fitness, exercise as being able to do more. But actually, for some people, it's basically still being able to do what they can do now. So it isn't necessarily about being able to do more. It's about, stopping the decline. Just, I don't necessarily want to be able to do more. I just want to be able to keep doing what I'm doing now. And that's another big thing for people, isn't it? Rather than, being able to walk faster or further, it's just to be able to keep walking the distance they walk. And, as you get older, we know that kind of independence can deteriorate quite quickly if people aren't fit and healthy. So being able to just, being able to do at 80 what you can do at 60 is a big gain. It might not be lifting more and walking more, but you're doing the same, and that's huge. And I think we underestimate sometimes the importance of the small things that keep us independent. Like you say, being able to get on a bus and go shopping in the next town is a big thing for people. And it's getting to the bus stop, it's getting on the bus, it's getting off the bus, going to the shops, and it's having the grip strength to hang on to the handle when the bus starts moving.
And balance,
little things like that can really make. Yeah, it is, and it's just so important. So what sort of things are you planning for the future then? You've got sort of local classes and independent clients as well, one-to-one clients. What sort of things are you planning?
Well, like I said, I've been doing some virtual things as well with clients not living close by. I have just purchased my video recording things for doing some online classes. I'd like to just develop an album really of videos that I can produce, which are at different levels, so that people can, perform them easily, or do a bit, stop, but build up to something, and then, like I've talked about, increasing strength enough to get out of the house, do things more easily when they're shopping, and so generally, like, producing something that I can give to people once they've finished their physio, maybe, and then get them to a point where they could attend a class if they wanted to within the community, or within, their leisure centre, or wherever the class may be.
So literally starting where they are.
Yeah, literally.
I was going to say, one of the other things I wanted to say is, we kind of think if we're going to do some sort of activity or exercise, it's got to be done for a certain length of time. But actually, if some is better than none. So if you're doing nothing at the moment, 5 minutes is good.
Yeah, definitely.
That'll grow. So if 5 minutes is all you can manage, that's great, because it's 5 minutes more than you were doing before, and it will grow to 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8 minutes. So I think having these sort of online opportunities where people can just do 5 minutes here and maybe another 5 minutes later, breaking it up again is so important, because it makes it more accessible, doesn't it? And it builds people's confidence. So if they're local to you, once they've done your online stuff for a while, they'll be thinking, well, I'll go and see Becky in real life, because I know she'll look after me.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I always relate back to when we were a child, when we were a baby, and we crawled and we rolled and we, shuffled on our bottoms. And when was the last time that you did that? Because that's the part when you built up your maximum strength and core work. And people generally say they've not been on the floor for years. So, getting down to the floor is an issue, isn't it, for some people? So for me, it's really important to get them down onto the floor and hopefully safely get them back up again, but provide them with the strength and confidence to be able to do that. That's another thing I really, emphasize in my sessions. And then, so there's that, like I say, hip walking on the floor, isn't it? Rolling over, crawling, hands and knees.
Yeah.
And so building them up that way. But I was going to say something else now, but I can't think of what I was going to say.
But I was going to say, again, we talk about going down to the floor, back up. When you've got children, when you've got
You do it all the
grandchildren,
time.
they expect you to get down on the floor with them. But a lot of people are too nervous. It isn't necessarily the getting to the floor that's the issue. It's being able to get back up. But there's quite a lot of movement involved in that and strength involved in that. And again, it's those little things, isn't it? You know,
that's what I was going to say.
There's not a point where you should be saying, "Oh, I can't go down to the floor." Oh, well, don't then. It's like, well, you never know when you might need
it's
to,
huge.
or you never know when you might trip.
Yeah,
you have to get back up.
Just get into that phone, isn't it, or that emergency, I don't know, button or anything to be able to alert someone that you have fallen. And also, that's what I was going to say, is that when you are younger, you obviously as a baby, we crawl, we roll, and then we, go to school, do lots of walking, and then we have our own children where you are lifting, bending, and on the floor all the time, and then then you go back to work again if you like, then you possibly retire, and then you don't bend down as much, you don't tie your lace as much as you did. Like this morning, I may have bent down 3 times to tie my child's shoelace, or pulled her pants up, or we do so much on it when we're younger that by the time we've aged a bit, we've lost so much movement that we did years ago, and I think we forget that.
Yeah. And we also, the gap between doing all of that for your children and doing it for your grandchildren could be 20 years, which means, or 30 years even, which means that you've lost a lot of that ability. And it is, down to the floor, back up, down to the floor, back up. And I look after a grandchild quite a lot. I look after quite a few, but one of them we do a lot of out and about in London. And, we go to things that involve sitting on the floor for periods of time. And, I'm aware that it's harder for me to sit cross-legged on the floor than it used to be. But it makes me think I need to do more of that rather than I need to do less of it. So I think it's so important, isn't it? And it is, for me, what I'm really, really hearing from what you're saying is the importance of that everyday activity and that everyday function. So not looking on it as exercise or fitness, but looking on it as things that will help you have a better everyday life, be able to do more in your everyday life. Is that
absolutely,
kind of
especially when you've worked all your life and you retire, you want to be able to enjoy the money that you've made, everything, and go out and spend it and do things that you want to do. And for me, that's a big passion, because I've worked with so many ill people who've not lived very long, and so for me it's like really encouraging other people to go out and live it, go out and do what you want to do for as long as you can, because it can just be changed in an instant, can't it?
Yeah. And like we say, quite often it isn't the big things that take away your independence. Quite often it's the little everyday things that we don't even think about, which is where it's so important, isn't it? Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to?
I am online. So
I will put all the links in, but where can people find you?
I am on Facebook. I've got a Bfitr page, and Bfitr, and also I'm on Instagram.
Brilliant. So hopefully people will be able to find your online stuff soon, as you're about to start doing it. But thank you very much for coming along. And it is, as I say, this sort of community-based activity and accessible in the sense of it's convenient for people. It's just such an important part. So Becky, thank you for coming on and talking to me. Everyone, you've been listening to Creating Active Lives. Don't forget to follow me, to subscribe, to like, leave me a review, and we will see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.